The first time I saw him again, he was pointing a gun at my chest. And I laughed because, of course, only fate could be cruel enough to turn my savior into my executioner. It was a cold night in Brooklyn, the kind of night where the streetlights look like halos blurred by mist. I was just locking up the small coffee shop where I worked when the low rumble of boots echoed down the alley. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. That presence, solid, commanding, the air around him almost bending, was impossible to forget. In my past life, he had been the alpha general who fought 1,000 battles, whose hands shielded me from blades and bullets. In this life, those same hands gripped a gun aimed at my heart. "Evan," he said, my name a whisper of something dangerous. "You've been very hard to find." I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. "And you've been far too eager to find me, Luke." The rain started to fall, soft at first, then harder, until my coat was heavy and my hair clung to my face. His eyes didn't waver, not even for a second. There was no trace of the man who once carried me on his back through a burning battlefield. Now, there was only the alpha enforcer, the one people whispered about in fear. "What do you want from me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "You know what you took," he replied, "and I want it back." The truth was, I hadn't taken anything that belonged to him, at least, not in this life. But in the tangled mess of our souls, maybe the heart he once gave me still counted as stolen property. The first time I met Lucky in the other timeline was during the war between alphas and betas. I was an Omega medic, untrained in combat, terrified of blood. The battlefield was chaos, but he found me, crouched in the mud, clutching the trembling hands of a wounded soldier. "Stand up," he'd ordered, his voice rough but not unkind. "You're not going to die here." He had pulled me up, shielded me with his body as bullets cut through the air. Back then, he wasn't just a commander, he was a fortress. And I had hidden inside him without even realizing it. We didn't survive together. I died first. And now here we were, different war, different rules, but the same two souls caught in the same gravitational pull. Only this time, instead of protecting me, Luke seemed determined to crush me. I didn't run that night in Brooklyn. If he was going to shoot me, I wanted to see his eyes when he did. But instead of pulling the trigger, he stepped closer. "You've been hiding in plain sight," he said, glancing at the coffee shop door. "Serving lattes like you've never had blood on your hands." "I haven't," I said. "Not in this life." He tilted his head, rain dripping from the brim of his hood. "Then why do you remember me?" The question hit like a blade to the ribs. My breath caught. "Do you?" His silence was all the answer I needed. The days that followed were a cat-and-mouse game. I'd see him leaning against the brick wall across from my apartment building. I'd catch glimpses of his shadow in subway stations. Sometimes, late at night, I'd swear I could feel him standing outside my door, listening to my heartbeat through the wood. I tried to tell myself it was fear that made my pulse race when he was near, but the truth was it was recognition. Some part of me still belonged to him, no matter what he was now. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was closing the shop again when the door swung open, and there he was. No gun this time, just a wet black coat, a sharp glare, and a storm in his eyes. "We need to talk," he said, voice low. I shook my head. "I think we've said enough." "Not about the past," he said. "About now. About what's coming." He stepped forward, closing the distance between us until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "There's a war brewing, Evan, and when it starts, your bloodline will make you the target. I'm not here to kill you. I'm here to keep you alive." I stared at him, caught between relief and confusion. "You've been hunting me just to protect me?" "Not hunting," he said. "Guarding." His eyes softened, but only slightly. "You were mine once. Maybe you still are." The rain outside turned into a roar against the glass. My heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with something I didn't want to name. The rain didn't stop for days after that night. It was as if the city itself knew what was coming, something violent, something final. Luke stayed in my orbit, close enough to protect me, far enough that I couldn't accuse him of being in my life. But danger has a way of finding you even when you're trying to disappear. One evening, As I walked home from the shop, the air turned heavy, the street too quiet. I knew the feeling, predators in the dark. I wasn't wrong. A group of betas stepped out from the shadows, their eyes sharp, their scents aggressive. "Omega," one of them sneered. "You're the one with the alpha guard dog." I stepped back, heart racing. "I don't know what you're talking about." They laughed, closing in. The leader raised his hand, and before I could move, a bullet sliced the air. It didn't hit, might dropped the man closest to me. The world slowed as Luke appeared from behind them, his gun smoking, his coat billowing like the wings of something merciless. It was over in seconds. The attackers lay unconscious or worse, the street stained with the kind of violence I had sworn I'd never see again. Luke walked toward me, his hands still trembling from the fight. "You're hurt," he said, voice tight. I shook my head, but my voice broke. "You can't keep doing this. You can't keep saving me just to throw me back into danger." His jaw clenched. "I don't want to save you. I want to keep you. But you're too busy running from me." "Because you're not the man I knew," I said. "That man died in another lifetime." His eyes darkened, pain flashing there. "And you think I didn't die with him?" We didn't speak for 2 days after that. The silence was its own kind of war. But when the Real fight came, there was no choice but to stand together. The Beta faction had decided to make an example of me and Omega, whose lineage carried rare genetic traits valuable to both sides. They struck at night, storming the block in black vans. I barely had time to grab my coat before Luke burst through my door. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice the same as the day he'd first pulled me from a battlefield in another life. I did, not because I wanted to obey, but because some part of me still believed he was my shield. The fight spilled into the street gunfire, shouts, the smell of smoke. Luke moved like he was born for this, every motion a promise that no one would reach me. But then, I saw Ida Beta aiming from a rooftop, a clear shot at his back. I didn't think. I moved. The bullet grazed my shoulder before I hit the ground. Pain flared white-hot, and Luke was suddenly over me, his hands pressing against the wound, his eyes wild. "Don't you ever do that again," he growled, his voice breaking. "You would have died," I whispered. "And you think I could live without you?" His breath shuddered. "You're mine, Evan. In this life, in the last, in every one after." When the smoke cleared, the betas were gone. The war, for now, was over. Luke sat beside me in the back of an ambulance, refusing to leave even when the medics told him to. I turned my head toward him, feeling the pull that had never really left. "You're still the same," I said softly. "Under all the armor, under all the raguerie, still him." His lips curved, just barely. "And you're still the one worth dying for." The rain began again, light this time, almost gentle. He reached out, his fingers brushing mine before lacing them together. It wasn't a battlefield anymore. It wasn't a life where one of us had to die first. This time we had a chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.